Good afternoon. Welcome. We're going to give it a few minutes and let people start rolling in. But in the meantime, if you would like to put in the chat where you're joining us from and maybe what the weather's like. And Maria, how's it going where you are?
I am in Tallahassee, Florida, and it is gorgeous out. So no complaints here.
Wonderful. Let's see. Do we have anybody in the chat?
Yeah, we got Arizona, Boston, New York.
This is great. I am on the East Coast. I'm in Virginia. It is very nice today. It's about 68 degrees somehow in November. I cannot believe that.
Oh, we've got Krista from South Africa.
Awesome. Georgia. Oh, I bet it is nice in Georgia.
Got some Toronto in the house.
I'm trying to see how many people we've got in here so far. And whether we should go ahead and get going. So I want to be cognizant of time. So I think I'm going to go ahead and get us moving along here. We'll do well, good job. Sorry about that. We will do a little bit of housekeeping first. This presentation is being recorded. You will receive the recording after the webinar. If you have any questions for Maria during the presentation, please put them in the QA area of the Zoom, and we will have some time at the end to get those answered. Before we get started, I want to give a quick overview of what we do here at Bloomerang. We are a donor database system for all of your fundraising and management needs. If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, I am Kate Kramer, the Partner Marketing Manager. We would love to chat with you. I think we'll have a link in the chat if you would like any more information. We also would like to ask for a little help with our latest research project. We have partnered with the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy to identify how small and mid-sized nonprofits develop their annual fundraising strategy. If you would help us out, we would love it. The link will be in the chat. We'll also drop it in again at the end, just so that you have it in front of you. And then, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Maria Bryan of Maria Bryan Creative. She is a nonprofit marketing and messaging strategist. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you so much. So keep the intros coming. Love seeing where everybody's from and what the weather is like. There's really people across the globe, so that's really exciting. Today we are going to talk about content planning, which is perfect timing if you're thinking ahead to 2023, or if you have an annual appeal campaign, end of year Giving Tuesday campaign. So we are going to learn a lot, and you're going to get a lot of goodies to kind of kickstart what we learned today. And with that, I wanted to share a number of templates for you. So you can do a QR code, but I'll also stick the link in the chat. This is a marketing template pack that has everything from a social media calendar, a storytelling cheat sheet, which has like actual interview questions that you can ask donors and clients, a marketing production calendar, audience persona template, DEI checklist, and more. So there are a lot of really great templates. So not just blogs to read, but actual templates that you can use to kickstart what we're learning today. So please do download those templates. Thank you for that introduction, Kate. I'd love to tell y'all a little bit more about me and my story. I started out studying journalism in college, really passionate about storytelling. And I started my career in the Peace Corps as a Peace Corps volunteer in Ghana and West Africa. And as you can imagine, this was a very impactful, pivotal time in my life. And like many people in their 20s, I hit this crossroads. Do I want to continue down this journalism path where I studied and where I've just always saw myself? Or do I, go down this road of public service? And it really, felt like a really big decision to make. And shortly after I returned from Peace Corps, a communications position opened up at a nonprofit in Chinatown, Manhattan. This was a very large community health center serving immigrants. And I felt like I found home. I was able to reconcile my love for storytelling and my passion for public service, working in nonprofit communications and marketing. But the problem is, I knew nothing about nonprofit marketing. I could tell a good story, but all of what marketing entails, and for those of you who may also consider yourself accidentally in your role or position, there were so many acronyms I didn't understand. My first marketing plan was like 14 pages long and nobody wanted to read it, even myself. I spent years going to webinars like this one, going to conferences, reading blogs. Eventually, I did get my master's degree in public administration. So it took time to feel confident as a nonprofit marketer, but I did eventually get there, and I actually built very successful communications and marketing programs at two of the largest public health organizations serving New Yorkers. And then I hit another crossroads. I had my first baby. This is actually my second baby, Winona. And I just Kate, can you see my screen right now? My cute little baby and me in Ghana. So I can just make sure that people are seeing my screen all right.
Yes.
Perfect. So I had my first baby, Mia, in 2018 and felt like I needed to get out of the 9-to-5 grind. So I left a really amazing, well-paying nonprofit job to start my own consultancy, Maria Bryan Creative. So, which brings me to my consultancy, where I teach hundreds of people across the country and globe on how to create messaging and storytelling that's impactful and how to market with purpose. And I'll tell you what, I usually end my story there. But in a recent marketing training, I had a student ask me, we work with very vulnerable populations. Where does trauma-informed storytelling practices work in your marketing framework? And I did the best I could to answer her, but I realized I just didn't really know a lot about trauma-informed marketing and storytelling, which put me down this rabbit hole or this path and journey. So I'm finding myself once again in a new season of stumbling and learning about the importance of trauma-informed and ethical storytelling. So for those of you that feel like you're just in a season of learning, we're all in this together, and you better believe that I'm going to touch on trauma-informed and ethical storytelling in this presentation. So welcome. I appreciate you choosing to be in this space with us today. We are going to talk about content planning. So this is kind of the rundown of what you can expect this hour. We're going to talk about what it takes to create content in advance that's thoughtful and meaningful. And then we're going to talk about storytelling. We're going to talk about your messaging and how to create consistent messaging that's impactful. And then we're also going to touch on how can we do this in a way that is ethical and trauma informed, that dignifies and protects the people you serve and your audience members. And why does this matter that we talk about marketing, that we talk about content planning? Content planning is your stories. And to be honest, that's all that marketing is a way to share your stories in a way that gets people to act on whether that is to donate to you or to take part in your service or to become a partner or to become a rabid fan, an ally. So no matter what your goals are this year, it's storytelling and marketing that's going to make it happen. And I have seen firsthand when people tell a good story, how it can change the trajectory of someone's life and how people decide to dedicate themselves to a cause. So when you take the time not just to search out good stories but to be thoughtful about how you're telling them and creating your content. You're going to ditch marketing panic, which tell me in the chat or raise your hand if you feel any kind of marketing panic when you have a campaign coming up or you just don't know what you're going to talk about in your next e-newsletter. Or this is going to streamline a huge marketing task so that you can focus on the hundreds of other things that are on your plate. So what today is about is not just getting something out to get it out, but doing it in a way that is purpose-driven. And I want to lay a really important foundational groundwork for what really works in marketing, and that is the marketing rule of one. Whether you're sending out an e-newsletter or a Facebook message or an Instagram post or a webinar like this or a podcast, or even having a gala or an in-person event, maybe you're even just picking up the phone and calling people. This power of one is crucial, that you are talking with just one audience member in mind. You have one central message that you want to get across. You do so by telling one story. And if you have a call to action, just have one call to action. So if you're thinking about your e-newsletter that is written for about 4 different audiences and has about 5 different calls to action, yes, I am challenging the traditional way that we broadcast to several audiences at once on our social media, email, and website. But it is possible to, and less is more within this framework. When you are crafting things, do so with one person in mind, have that one message, story, and call to action. So people feel like you are talking directly to them, which is the state of marketing right now. I mean, who you can tell me in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you have gotten an eerily ad on Instagram or Facebook based on a conversation that you had recently. And it's just spooky that just speaking about something that you need or want, and you get this ad that has to do with you. People are expecting very personal and relevant communications. And keep your questions coming. We will get to them. I'll probably pause about in the middle and at the end. So what does it take to have a good understanding of your audience? And one way to do that is to have an audience persona. So let's say your goals this year is to fill your program so you have a beneficiary in mind, one beneficiary in mind, and you want to increase individual donors. So if you have a particular individual donor in mind, they might be an alumni of your program, they might be someone that's more established in their field. So take this swath of people, this audience group, and think of what one person might be and flesh out who that person is. So that's thinking about what their demographics are. This is important. If you serve Asian Americans, that's something that you want to identify. If the majority of your donors are women of color, that's something that you want to be thinking about when you're creating these messages. What are their communications preferences? Do they prefer email and text? Do they prefer to go on Facebook or Instagram? Are you more likely to find them on LinkedIn? Are they consuming their news through social media or maybe through podcasts? When you actually ask your audience members where they receive communications, then you don't have to broadcast on 10 different platforms. You can make choices to use fewer platforms because you know your audience members are there. Then this is key. Think about what their goals and values are pertaining to your organization. Maybe they're concerned about climate. Maybe they just want to be the best parent possible. Maybe they want to be a good neighbor. So have an understanding of, in their heart, what kind of goals and values they have. And what are their challenges to meet those goals and values? Maybe they're just not making enough income to financially support. Maybe they have the money, but they're really, really busy because they've got 3 kids and a job and they're in grad school. So be thinking through what those challenges are so you can address those challenges in your messaging. And think about their motivations, right? Maybe their motivations are a little ego-driven. Maybe if you're trying to pass legislation and you want to be communicating with elected officials, just knowing that they want to get reelected for the next term is just good to know when you're creating communications for them. And then this is where you come in as your nonprofit. Think about how specifically you help them combat those challenges and meet those goals, values. and motivations, and make sure that you have that call to action. Sign up for our program, come to our next gala, visit our website. So I wanted to share a story about when I thought a little bit deeper about my audience. When I was in college, I went to a small college in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and we had a satellite campus at Temple University in Philadelphia. And I went to the satellite school for a year, and then my senior year, I had a job to help market this satellite campus. We wanted students to know that the satellite campus exists, so they would apply and go to this program. And every few months, the owner of the satellite campus, the person who was in charge of it, let's say she was the manager of it, would ask for my help to fill a info session so students could come and learn more about it. And this is like really social media. So there's MySpace, but people weren't really using social media to advertise. So that was kind of off the table. The typical way that I was told to market, and that typically programs marketed, there were TV screens in the dining rooms and in the mail room. So if you had something coming up, you could put it on the screen. So I kind of did what I was told. And I think about 3 people showed up. It was fully catered. We had this huge room, and like it was embarrassing. And it was like a real big, like knife to the ego when we had this event and nobody came by. And I wasn't blamed for it because I did what the typical marketing activity was for that time. We had another event coming up in 2 months, and I was like, I'm going to fill that room. So what did I do? I created a flyer that said free food, where the room was, and you can also come and learn about our Philly campus. And I put these flyers on the inside of every bathroom stall of every dorm room on campus. That was my marketing strategy. And you bet we packed the room out with people who saw these messages because they were in a space where there was nowhere else to go. And we led with free food. So think outside of the box with your marketing strategies and think about maybe the typical traditional marketing platforms and activities that you just think to do. Maybe there's more specific and relevant ways to reach your specific audience. Okay, let's chat about the different platforms that you could use to reach your audience. So if you only have a Facebook presence, you only have your website, just know there's so many different kinds of platforms that you can use to reach your people. So we break this down as the media mix. So we'll kind of give you a breakdown of the pros and cons of each. It is crucial that you have your own media. That's your website, your email list. For Bloomerang, it's this webinar. They own this webinar. They're not hosting it on a social media. Maybe it's your podcast. What's great about this is this isn't something that's going to be taken away overnight. For anyone on the day after Halloween, lost their Instagram account for a few hours, let me know in the chat if that happened to you. And know that this happens. We don't own our social media. So make sure you have your own platforms that you've invested in and you have full control over what the messaging is and what it looks like, what the aesthetics are. And it's not going to be taken away from you. But the problem is, unless you're the Red Cross, people aren't going to just come to your own media. You need to direct people to your own media. And that's where earned, shared, and paid comes into place. I think the most underutilized pillar here are earned media. So you might traditionally think of that as getting a journalist to cover what you're working on, upcoming event, or the work that you're doing, or research that you're doing. Earned media is essentially getting in front of other people's audiences. So you want to get in front of audience members that could potentially be your audience members as well. So not just any audience member, not, the car dealership's audience members, but like-minded organizations or people that talk to the same kind of people that you want to attract. You can get in front of their audiences. And you can do so by cultivating relationships with influencers and journalists. You can do it with partnering with organizations on getting information on their blog or their email list. I want to tell you a fun story about a recent earned marketing that I experienced. The day before Halloween, there was a bottle of bubbly on my door with a sticker on it that said, "You've been boozed." And there was a little cartoon ghost on it. And there was a piece of paper. It was a handle, almost like a handle, like when you are at a hotel and it says "Do not disturb," that said, "Don't get spooked by real estate." And it was a picture of my realtor and a QR code to sign up for his social media and email list. So my realtor, the day before Halloween, put these bottles of Prosecco or Brut on every doorstep of homes that he had sold over the past, and it's been 3 years, so probably the past 5 years. Now, not only for me, did it just remind me how much I love him and what an amazing real estate agent he was, which keeps him top of mind 3 years in, and he's still top of mind. But I'll tell you what happened. What's one of the first things that I did? It was so cute that I had to take a picture of it and put it on Instagram, right? I wasn't asked to do this. I wasn't prompted to do this. And so I tagged Ian, my real estate agent. And when I went to his profile, I could see that he was resharing about a dozen other homeowners that were so, overjoyed by that they posted on social media. So what a fantastic marketing tactic to get in front of so many people, so many local people in Tallahassee, took a picture of this and shared it on their social media because it was so cool and out of the box. So that's the power of earned media and thinking outside of the box. And then we've got our shared media. Shared media is your social media, essentially. And the beauty about social media is this really is the marketplace right now. Billions of people are on social media, and they're going to social media to be entertained, to learn more about issues they care about, and to get their news. So you want to have a presence on social media. The problem is it's incredibly noisy on social media right now. Also, you don't have full control, even with paid, how many people and if they're the right people are seeing your messages. So use social media, but don't get the glittery eye syndrome where you invest so much in social media that it's taking away from really powerful earned media opportunities or even paid media opportunities. So let's get to paid. Paid is kind of a combination of earned and shared, but you're paying to get in front of eyeballs. So that's maybe paid partnerships with influencers. That's maybe Google ads or social media ads. So if you don't yet have a Google ad grant, I highly encourage you. This is free ad money that you can use. And what a Google ad is essentially is that when someone is searching for a problem and everyone here is solving a problem, your website is coming up as a solution to someone's problem. So when you're thinking about your next campaign or your day-to-day content that you're planning, I encourage you to use a combination of at least the first three. If you're going to use paid, definitely look into a Google ad grant. And if social media is working really well for you organically, maybe it's time to maybe put a few ad dollars towards that. And this is how you'll get the most out of it. And I hope my Don't Get Spooked by Real Estate story encourages you to think outside of the box. You don't just have to stay in digital marketing. You can get on the phone. You can have in-person events. There's many ways that you can reach potential donors and beneficiaries other than a social media presence. As you choose what your platforms are, don't ever get stuck on what content that you are going to post. So if your content strategy is just sending updates, and I feel like those of us in marketing communications can get really stuck in just sharing pictures of what we're doing and upcoming events that are coming up. There are so many diverse ways that you can engage with people across any platform that you choose. So be thinking of ways that you can be entertaining through your content. how you can inspire people through your stories of impact, how you can introduce your founding story and your volunteers and your board members and what's going on behind scenes. People might have donated to you. Don't assume they know everything about your issue. They might be just opening up to the world of the problems that you solve. So make sure you're keeping people up to date on your issue and educating them about the depths of the problem and what your unique solution is. Make sure you're leaving space to interact. Have those quizzes, and just about every social media platform and even email and website, you can have quizzes and other ways to interact. You can hold contests, have polls, surveys, ask provocative questions, be thinking about very specific content that's just going to spark some kind of engagement. And then you've got your updates. So you can also make sure that you're plugging in times to update people on your programs and services and events that are coming up. But I want to leave you with one really great bit of marketing advice that I had gotten recently. And that's as nonprofits are not newscasters. When something happens in your organization, it might feel like you need to get it out immediately. But if you have to choose between an update that just happened and an urgent call to action, like donate or sign up for our event, you don't need to tell that update immediately. You can share that for another time. Focus on the most urgent messaging that you need to get out there. So if you're thinking back to when I said one audience, one message, one story, and one call to action, and you're thinking, Maria, we have so many different messages and so many calls to action. Just prioritize, again, the most urgent and timely one. And some of these other stories can be parsed out throughout the year. And CTA is an acronym for call to action. So make sure that you're asking people to go to your website. You're asking people to donate. You're asking people to take advantage of your services. So what does this look like on paper? You're here to learn how to plan content, right? One of the first things that you can do is create a platform plan. Now, this doesn't just have to be social media. The platform can be direct calls or coffee or lunch meetings that you're having. It can be webinar trainings. Whatever it is, I would choose 3 to 5 that make sense for your audience and what your goals are, and be thoughtful about how you're going to get the most out of that platform. So what is the purpose? Why? What's the why behind using this platform? What's the tone that you're going to take on this platform? Is it going to be snarky? Is it going to be urgent? Is it going to be friendly, motivational? What's the tone and voice? What cadence can you realistically give to this platform? Maybe that's once a week. Maybe that's twice a week. We talked about the different kinds of content that you can be using. What kind of content are you committing to diversifying? So maybe you decide that you want to make sure that you're going to inform, inspire, and make your asks on this particular platform. What media makes sense? I have Instagram on here because you have people that feel like they need to be posting 3 times a week, but I'll tell you, those 3 image posts that you're posting versus 1 reel is going to make a big difference, because reels are so popular, trending, and the algorithms love reels. So you can choose to do 1 reel every 2 weeks and back off completely on posting images on Instagram. And I assure you, just do it over the next 2 weeks. You are going to have exponential more reach doing 1 reel. So don't feel like you need to be posting all the time. It really is quality over quantity, and doing the kind of content that's working. And generally speaking, that is video or something like reels when it comes to social media. And what's your engagement plan? Maybe it's just checking your messages once a day, liking and responding to comments, kind of keeping track of who's sharing things, and maybe even just engaging with people who you would like to be interacting on your platforms. So now that you have a clear picture of what platforms you're going to use and what the intention is behind them, now is the time to actually create your content. And you can do this in a few different ways, but especially if you have a team, I highly encourage you to take advantage of a content calendar. And I do have a Google version of a content calendar in that marketing template pack that you can use as an example. There's a few different kinds of Google Sheets you can use. You can use an actual Outlook calendar. You can use a platform like Airtable or Monday. I have some people that come to me feeling like they need to use the most sophisticated content plan out there, and you don't have to. Try a few things and see what works for you. My content planning, when we're talking about planning a ton of content in one day, to me, I do this in two different parts. One is I take the kinds of content themes, that's the inspire, educate, call to action, and I just will have all the different platforms, so the 3 to 5 platforms, and I'll just plot out, this week I'm going to inspire, this week I'm going to inform, this week I'm going to update. And then you should have a bird's eye understanding of when you have fundraising events coming up, when you have community events coming up that will guide those content themes. And then you'll have a space to say, this is the kind of media that we're going to focus on. We're going to create a blog post. We're going to create a reel. We're going to create a carousel, or we're going to create a deck if you're doing some kind of a presentation or speech. So that's the big picture planning that you can do. And from there, you can actually build out that content. That's designing, and maybe that's on Canva. And then you can actually write the captions right here in your content calendar if you want, or you can link to maybe a blog post or something like this. So this is one great way to just spend one day, maybe the last day of the month, just being thoughtful about the content that you're going to be producing over the next month or even the next quarter. I spend one day every quarter doing this to plan 3 months of content at once. And then I always leave room for things that just kind of come up or that are trending, but I do plan about 85 to 90% of my content, my email, my social media content, and my trainings in advance. It's possible. Okay, how's everybody doing? I just want to check in. I'm going to take a break. I know we got a lot of questions. I'm going to talk a little bit about storytelling, and then we're going to take a break for some questions. So when we talked about how many hats you need to wear as a marketer, one is this kind of project management, which is what I've talked about, just kind of being strategic and thoughtful about the kind of content you're doing. And now I kind of want to transition into having really consistent and powerful messaging and the planning it takes to do so. For those of you whose services maybe have evolved over the past few years, you might be feeling like you don't quite even know how to articulate what you do anymore because it's changed so much. Maybe you've been in the weeds of your work for so long that when you talk about your work at a barbecue and people's like eyes start getting glazed over and you feel like I really need to be able to articulate this better to people who are not in my field. Maybe you're an organization that has so many different services that it's really hard to articulate concisely why you exist and what is the work that you do. Taking time to create a core messaging guide and setting aside key messages is going to be game-changing for you. So this is what we're going to talk about, creating a messaging guide that's going to be your North Star for creating that actual content, the social media content, the email content, the speaking notes for your CEO. And when you take the time, and this is an internal document, by the way, this is an internal document that you can provide to all kinds of staff members when you're onboarding new staff, something from your CEO all the way down to people in the field. Everyone should have access to these key messages so people can confidently articulate what you're talking about, whether someone's writing a grant or they're planning your Giving Tuesday campaign. You want everyone to be articulating your mission, your work, your unique solution in the same way. So these are the best practices for having a key messaging guide. It doesn't have to be a thesis. Actually, in one organization, we went through a rebrand and I created a key messaging document that was folded like an accordion and you can put in your wallet. So it just had a few, this is our mission, our vision, and a few bullet points on our programs and how we talk about our unique solution. And every staff member had this accordion key messaging guide in their pocket or their wallet. It was accessible to them. So less is more. You want to make sure that people are understanding it, you're articulating it well, that it's memorable. So those of you that are using acronyms in your mission might not actually be as memorable as you think. So clear is better than clever here. And you can still do this in a way that's inspiring and compelling. So what does this actually look like? At its most basic, you might just have a Microsoft document split into 3 sections. You have your central message. This is your mission statement or your elevator pitch. So when you are when you're writing a grant and you have just those 3 sentences, 3 to 5 sentences about who you are, that's essentially your elevator pitch, your boilerplate. So you're starting off with your central message. And then you're talking about your positioning. Your unique positioning is what sets you apart from all other organizations that are doing similar things in your industry. And I'll give you some things to think about if you're unclear about your positioning. And finally, proof to back it up. So once you've identified what sets you apart, talk about what the greater issue is and where your solution comes in uniquely. And then you talk about quantitatively, what are your programs and what are their outcomes? And then qualitatively, what are the actual stories of impact that you have to show for your work? So take a snapshot of this. Kate, I don't know if you're giving the slides to everyone, but if this is a really great exercise to do with your leadership team or for your board, if you're having a hard time articulating what sets you apart, what makes you unique in your industry and your sector, here are a few questions that you can be ruminating on and thinking on. And this is going to be really helpful for you to be writing down what your positioning is. Let's talk about stories. What does it mean to tell a really good story? And just so you know, people are invested in your organization, not because of the number of people you serve and how many programs that you have. People truly invest in your organization because of the real lives, the real communities that have been changed through your nonprofit's work. And there is a storytelling arc. Everyone kind of talks about the literary arcs and frameworks. And the one that I adhere to is Donald Miller's Story Brand, a really, really simple storytelling arc that anyone really can use and remember. And once I tell you this, it's going to be in your head for every movie that you watch, every book that you read. This is an arc as old as time. An ordinary everyday person is faced with a huge problem that they can't ignore. They can't just brush it off. So they bravely trek out to confront it. And they meet all kinds of challenges along the way. And at some point, they do meet this wise mentor or guide who holds their hand, who clears the way and supports them on their quest. As they continue on their journey, there is still plenty of conflict, but this lead character is triumphant in the end. And this is key. They have not just overcome their challenges, but they will never be the same. They have undergone a huge transformation. So whether you're talking about a client, whether you're talking about a donor or even a volunteer, they have likely gone through this storytelling arc. And it's a simple but powerful way to show that you are solving really big problems. So where does your nonprofit come in? Because you aren't the lead character of this story. Your nonprofit is that guide. So your nonprofit is the Dumbledore to Harry Potter, the Grandma Tala to Moana, objectively the best Disney movie there is, the Obi-Wan Kenobi to Luke. Your nonprofit is that facilitator, that wise mentor or guide that has unique, authoritative solutions to people's problems. You're not central to the story, but you come in alongside your clients to support them in making their own transformations. So I'll just let that sit. There might be a little bit of relearning there. If your website talks more about your organization and what your organization, then your clients and your donors and your beneficiaries, it's time to maybe rework how you're talking about your organization. So this is a good time. I just want to pause just maybe for a couple of minutes to address a few questions. So let's see.
Perfect. We do have quite a few questions, Maria.
Okay. And I have more learning. I still have a few more slides, but I do kind of want to take a break to answer a couple of questions.
Sure. So first we have an attendee that says, a lot of what I have seen is based around making the messaging super personal. However, my organization cannot make asks around specific examples. What are some ways to make something vague seem more personal or to have a more meaningful impact?
Okay. And what I think I'm hearing is you don't want to, I'm having a blank on what the restricted funding. So you don't want to fundraise for something specific like a book bag drive and then raise thousands of dollars for a book bag drive when you only really need maybe $300. I feel like that might be what you're asking. And if that's the case, people do want to visualize and have an understanding of what they're donating for, more than just donating for your general mission. So there are ways to word things where you are galvanizing people around a really specific project, but being clear in your messaging that your funding goes towards projects like this one, even something simple like that, making it clear that these are the kinds of exciting projects that we're doing. This is the kind of impact that we're having. This is what we have coming up in 2023. When you donate to us, it's going to go towards really exciting projects like this. So that's how you are able to tell those impactful stories and talk about really specific, exciting projects, but to be clear that your money will not be restricted towards this one project. I hope that answers your question.
So another question that may have been along the same lines was, what if HIPAA is hindering the stories that you are able to tell?
Okay, and so I was thinking that might be it. Let's put a little tab on that, because I'm going to talk about trauma-informed and ethical storytelling, which is going to tie greatly into HIPAA. So I'm going to give you really actionable ways to tell stories in a way that is safe and protects any of you that are working in healthcare, that are working in domestic violence, even with homeless. There is a way to tell stories in a way that isn't going to exploit them or just simply be illegal for things like HIPAA. So I'm going to get to that. Maybe we can take 2 more questions.
Okay, 2 more. Is it worth it to take time away from the basic marketing I have time to do in order to do the creative marketing ideas instead?
Right. So yes, I'm a big advocate of pressing pause on your day-to-day marketing. And you might not be able to do it during the busiest seasons. I find that in fundraising, that and also for community programs, that the summer and the end of the year are just so busy. And so those other times that are a little bit less busy, we call those warm-up seasons. So those are the seasons that you are not making big asks, but you are just generously sharing about the gravity of your problem, how you're uniquely solving it, and all of those impact stories. And that will take a little bit less work than the buildup of campaigns during the summer and the winter. And it might be different seasons for you. Those are the times that I want you to commit to do something outside of the box and something a little bit more creative. When you start planning your Giving Tuesday campaign over the summer, which seems like really far in advance, but I've supported a number of organizations with their end of year campaigns over the summer. Giving that much space is going to allow you to be creative and think outside of the box. So the first thing that I want you to do is look at the data. Be really realistic with yourself on, we've just been doing the same thing for so long. We just know we need to get out a newsletter once a month, and we know we need to post on social media every week. And we do speak with this partner organization, and pause, look at the numbers, see what's working, what's not working, and see what you can cut down on. So you're just focusing on high value activities, which is going to leave space for you to try something new that also might not work, and that's okay. But really effective marketing is being creative and trying things a little bit different.
Okay, we'll do one more.
Great.
How do you recommend ways to get more collaboration within your organization to get more content?
Right. 2 words: donuts and coffee. And I know things have changed. A lot of people are working remote. So that's one way I was able to, when I worked in-house, is I would put together editorial meetings, and I would have, you're seeing a theme with all of my marketing tactics have been food related. I think that's because of my nonprofit grad school background, where like, if you have food, people will come. But jokes aside, there's 2 ways you can go about it. You can have a meeting where you're bringing people in and you're just asking them to share their stories. Another interesting way to get people involved is you show up to them. So when I worked in-house, I was going to every single team meeting, whether it was human resources, whether it was programs and services. I would ask for 5 minutes at the beginning of every meeting. And I would come and I would ask them to give me updates, which was incredibly important. And then I would kind of have this spiel about, listen, in marketing communications, I'm here to serve you. Like, really, like, I'm a helper to the helpers. You're making the world a better place. I'm here to just help promote your programs. And every day I just do as much as I can to help you and fill your programs and make you look fantastic and make sure that our brand is reflecting the fantastic services that you're providing. I just have one ask. And that's when you're maybe asking them to actively share their stories, or to be more active and share your social media. You know, if you have like a social media ambassador program or something like that, ask that of your team. Say, I do a lot for you. I'm in service to you, but I'm asking that you help me in my job in this way. So when I worked in New York City, I was literally getting on the train, traveling in every borough, actually showing up face to face. And that might be on Zoom, but still see what you can do to not be in a silo, but almost become like a team member of every team in your organization. And you'd be surprised about how excited people will get to take part in marketing activities and to get buy-in when you show up in that way. Okay, we've got 10 minutes. So I do kind of want to finish up here to leave room for more questions. Before that, I did want to share a really great opportunity for us to work further together if your head is spinning a little bit about messaging. If you are relating to, we've been through a strategic visioning and we don't really know how to articulate this new vision, or we have so many different services, or we're a new organization and we're having a hard time articulating what we do, I do want to invite you to chat with me further about a messaging retreat that I host. This is an all-day and sometimes 2-day program that's one-on-one between me and your organization's leadership, where we set the foundation for trauma-informed ethical storytelling. From there, we go into a deep, deep discovery where we talk about your donor's experience. We talk about your beneficiary's story. And then we talk about those kinds of questions that I gave you. How do we really deep dive into what sets your organization apart? What is their unique worldview? How do they want to make the world a better place? What is their role in that? I call it marketing therapy, and it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of aha moments in that. And then from there, we actually will co-create a few things together. If needed, we will refresh your mission statement. We will define what your vision statement is. We'll clarify what your values are and what your value statements may look like. And then we're going to make that core messaging guide that I talked about, a really in-depth core messaging guide that can be shared amongst all of your staff, your grant writers, your fundraisers, those in marketing communications. Everything is going to be in one place. What your central message is, what your beneficiary's story is, what your donor story is, and what your unique positioning is. And then all those little bits and pieces, the programs you have, the number of people you serve, maybe 3 to 5 stories that you just want to keep going to this next year. It's all going to be in one place. It's one of my favorite things to do. So if you want just to have a call and talk a little bit more about a messaging trait for your organization, now is beautiful timing with the new year coming up. You can even schedule it for next year. I would just love to chat with you about refining your messaging and your stories and doing so in a way that is trauma informed. So let's talk about ethical and trauma informed storytelling. Let me know in the chat or raise your hand if you remember Sally Souther's Life for Sale for 70 cents a day for a cup of coffee. Traditional marketing is understanding people's pain points, sticking a knife in it and twisting it, and then providing a solution. And this is a tactic that we use in nonprofit marketing, especially in the 90s and the aughts. We saw a lot of this knife twisting, or what we call poverty porn, really. And saying, you know, your role is to come and save. There's so many problematic ways to take these marketing tactics that really work in the for-profit space and bringing it into the nonprofit space. It may work in the immediate, but it does a huge disservice to the people that we serve. Everyone in this room is solving huge problems, and they are working with people in deep, deep pain. So how do we tell these stories, craft these stories in a way that protects those we serve, that is compliant with things like HIPAA, and dignifies the people we serve? And we really do that in 2 ways. We do that through ethical marketing tactics and through trauma-informed marketing tactics. Ethical marketing and storytelling combined, like I said, it's a practice, it's a workflow of honoring and respecting and dignifying the people that we serve. Those who take part in your programs, they're humans, they're complex. What brought them to your door is nuanced. And it likely has to do with much deeper systematic problems and interrelated factors than just them being a single mom or whatever it may be. So one quick tip on ethical marketing and storytelling is to be very aware of the language that you're using. And is it giving agency to the people you serve? Or is it pushing this kind of poverty porn and this us versus them, this hero savior versus victim? So if you're talking about hard to reach populations, maybe you want to be talking about underrepresented or systematically marginalized. Are you talking about empowering the people that you serve? How can we flip that so people are empowering themselves? So maybe you're equipping them to empower themselves. So one really important way to do this is, I told you, this storytelling arc. If you are sharing a story and you're stopping in the middle of the arc, when they are in the middle of the hardest, most difficult, traumatic, painful experience, and this is low-hanging fruit for marketers, just going to your current clients and asking them what their story is. Really painting a picture of a dire situation and saying, please come in and help save this person through your donations. It's actually very, very common messaging right now for people to share the middle of the arc instead of closing the transformation loop. So what I'm asking you to do is make sure you're closing the loop. Make sure that you are finding stories of people who have already gone through this transformation, that they are already in their brighter future, and that they have chosen to tell their story as part of their healing process. So go to alumni, go to people who have already gone through your programs successfully before you're asking them to share their stories. So I really love this quote. This is from The Development Element, created by Jennifer Letfer. And this is so true. When we are painting people as victims, we are not giving them agency over their solutions. So make sure that you are telling nuanced stories that are providing greater context. Trauma is a human response to an event, right? So trauma-informed storytelling is a process. It is a net in place that is safe and healthy for your beneficiaries and your audiences. And if there's one thing that you take away from today, it's that your beneficiaries don't owe you their stories. It's not part of the deal. Just because you are generously providing and serving them doesn't mean that in turn they need to provide their stories to your marketing department. So one thing that you can provide are just informed and enthusiastic consent. Maybe make sure that you are getting informed and enthusiastic consent from those who are giving their stories, and allow lots of space and control. Make sure that people are, if they are asking to reschedule or to stop or to take breaks or to end the conversation, that is, that you are allowing that. So I am going to provide some resources for that. And I just quickly want to note that trauma is pervasive. So not just are the people that you're serving experiencing trauma, but people that you're in your audience that are reading your emails and your appeals may also be experiencing some kind of a trauma. So make sure again that you are not twisting the knife when you are telling your stories. If you are going to itch a scratch, make sure that you are itching that scratch of hope. So with that, I just in the chat, I'm going to give you a few resources, and I am going to open up for questions right now. I know we just have a few more minutes. I do just want to leave with you a whole lot of grace and empathy for those of you who are embarking on things like trauma-informed and ethical storytelling. We're in this together. We're all learning together on how to do this in a way that serves well. So maybe, Kate, as a first question, I could just say with HIPAA regulations that more practical ways are that you can tell people stories anonymously. You don't have to use their name. You can change a few things. And when you're using images, you can use images in a way that doesn't, can be a stock photo that may represent them, or show a picture that is silhouetted or something like that. So there are ways to tell real and powerful stories in a way that still is anonymous. So for those of you dealing with HIPAA, that's one way to do that.
Thanks, Maria. Really quick before we jump into questions, since we're running a little short on time, we do want to put up a poll for today. If you want more information about Maria or Bloomerang or both, please let us know and we can pass that along to her. And we're going to drop that survey link in the chat one more time that I mentioned at the beginning. Please let us know please fill that out if you have time. And then we only have about 1 or 2 minutes left. Really quick, is your retreat virtual? Someone did ask that.
It is virtual.
Wonderful. And then let's do, what if your audience is older, Gen Z and boomers, but you want to draw in and connect with millennials and Gen Z in order to grow?
Right. So for that, I would say just have very specific goals. So if your goals are to talk to your current audiences, then be on those platforms. If you're going through a season where you want to attract new audiences, then you might just end up in a season of cutting down on platforms that just work for Gen X and boomers, and be exploring new platforms. So really what I'm saying is don't do it all at once. Decide that you're going to take a season and try new things if you don't have a huge team that's able to tackle both at once. So do that. Definitely reach new audiences and try new things, but just know that time and resources are limited. And so you might have to cut down on other audiences at that time.
Wonderful. We'll do a few more. I'm aware we're over time. If people need to jump off, we understand.
And Kate, I'm happy to stay on a couple more minutes for those who want to stay on for a couple of minutes.
Perfect. How does a small nonprofit create messaging without a strategic plan?
It's absolutely possible. And it might be a mini version of strategic planning. A lot of strategic planning is visioning, and visioning sometimes is part of the messaging process. So to break it down, you don't need to have a strategic plan in place in order to do messaging, but you do have to sit and ask these questions. Like, why do we exist? Who are the people we serve? What do we do that's different that others are doing? And like, even being able to articulate what your impact is. Like, can you really articulate? I'm surprised sometimes people have a hard time even articulating what their services are, what they do and who they serve. Real quick, for example, I worked with an organization and their messaging that talked about serving vets and serving seniors and all these people. But when we talked about their messaging, what we understood was who they served were volunteers. Their whole program was getting volunteers together to make packages for vets, to make packages for seniors. So they were even though at the end of the day, these other people benefited from their services, asking these kind of questions and getting down to their messaging, we realized they actually serve volunteers. That's what they do. So messaging can be really powerful and even clarifying the kinds of services that you provide.
Wonderful. How do you stick to the rule of one if you have multiple programs? For example, 3 programs with distinctive services, but the audience is pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I would say that, and this is really, if you have an e-newsletter that is both for donors and programs, that's really kind of where it gets problematic when you're saying, come to our next community event and also come to our gala, when you've got like 2 different audiences. So for those of you who haven't segmented yet, make sure you're segmenting. If you have a list that is specifically for your programs and you want to highlight 3 urgent programs that are coming up, the one message is we have these 3 programs that we want you to take. I would consider that one message. So if one is coming up this month and one's not for 6 months from now, then I would say just talk about the most urgent program. But if you want to, if this one message is maybe just like a very, let's just say self-care, and you're not really having a call to action. And then the next email is, this is an update. This is the message. This is our update. These are the 3 programs that we have going on this month. That's the one message. So I hope that's clear.
Good. Great advice. A participant said they did Google ads and they got tons of spam calls.
I saw that question.
Insight on navigating that?
Yeah, I don't. I think it's just good intel to have that. I find that sometimes if your messaging is too broad on your website, you'll get a little bit more spam too. So I think possibly being very, very clear, very, very crystal clear on your services, that might weed a few spam things out. But unfortunately, spam is just abundant right now. So I don't know if you're doing your own Google ads or if you have someone supporting you in that, but I would just make sure, even if you can get a consultant, and this is not my area of expertise, but a consultant to take a look to see like what is causing all of this spam response.
Thank you. When an event gets close, we're emailing and posting about it multiple times a week, including in an e-news as well. Is that too much?
No, it's not. Keep going.
All right.
People are need to be reminded. They say 7 times, that I'm hearing like 31. They need 31 touch points to make a decision. So if you need to ramp it up, what I tell people is allow people to opt out of a campaign. So if there's a gala coming up and you're like, press this button if you don't want to hear any more about the gala, and give people that permission. But people need to hear things many times in many different ways to make an action. So if there's a very specific action, so there's a campaign or an event, it's okay to ramp up the cadence. And I encourage you to do so.
Wonderful. Do you have any recommendations on how a marketing department and a fundraising department can come together on this if there's a history where each department comes up with their own comms calendar and they tend to compete and do not complement each other?
Oh yeah, I know that's like absolutely generally speaking the case. And that's a leadership, I don't want to say issue, but like that's when the leadership needs to come together and make decisions that you're gonna collaborate on messaging. And so maybe invite, if you do something like your own message, like let's say you do your own messaging retreat without me or help. But if you're getting the buy-in of everyone in the room, instead of saying, hey, we're going to handle this and give it to you, if there's ways to kind of get everyone in the room, but that's really tough. That's really, really complicated. I would hope that of all I know there's a lot of tension sometimes between programming and marketing communications, but I would hope that fundraising and communications can support one another to be consistent. It is so crucial that both teams are talking about your organization consistently and the same. You don't want two different kinds of messages going out.
Wonderful. We'll do one more and then we'll wrap up for today. What are your thoughts on cross-posting on different social media platforms, and how do you differentiate between them, such as Instagram and Facebook?
So I had gotten really good advice on this actually from Abby from Neon One recently, who suggested you really want to lead people to your website. So if you start with one piece of content, which is likely a web page or your blog post, and then break that down depending on the platform that makes sense. So that will look like a reel on Instagram or something similar for TikTok. On Facebook, it might be a link to the blog and parceling out a little bit of the content. Maybe you're making infographics from that blog post. There's a lot of ways to take bite-sized parts, but you're directing people back to your website because that's your realm, right? You want people to be going to your website, and then you're not recreating the wheel. You've got this one longer form piece of content that you're doing differently. So I think the heart of your question is, can I get away with posting the same thing? And I think the actual copy you can, but I would make sure that the media makes sense for the platform that you are on.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Maria. We really appreciate it. And I hope you'll come and join us in the future for another webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.